Hi everyone, and welcome to your Module 2 webinar for Master Color Expert Online. Before I say anything further, guys, write in the comments section your name, where you're connecting from as usual, and also tell us what you're most looking forward to this module. While you say that, I'm just going to explain what we are going to discuss today. So we are going to be doing a quick reflection on Module 1 and how that went. We will be discussing how best to approach your Module 2 assessments, and we will be talking about how to start presenting yourselves as Master Color experts. Today we also have a special guest who is going to give us some more insight. But before I go any further, I am going to welcome Chris and Eddie here today. Hi guys. Thank you for joining us today. I know we're all joining from different locations around the world, but it's so good to have internet. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
I am not going to introduce you guys this time because I think they know who you are by now. But what I will ask you, like I've asked the participants, what are you most looking forward to this module?
Ooh, good question. I am a big nerd, so I love the chemistry. So in Module 1, it was all about biology. You learn about the eye, and I love that. But when it comes to chemistry and we look at all of the ingredients in a tube of color, I think it's so exciting. I actually got to make my own tube of color recently. I was in R&D about 3 weeks ago, and I made my own tube, and I was so proud. And I suppose the big thing for me to shout out, talking about ingredients, yes, the technical term is dye stuffs. I know all of you have asked me that question. Yes, it's not a typo. It's
not a spelling mistake. So yeah, I guess Eddie is the science nerd. I'm more of the creative end. So I don't know if you guys know, but I also look after all the global trends that we deploy every single semester. And so I'm really excited to see how you guys bring alive your model assessment, because that's what I'm obsessed with, is seeing hair and seeing new techniques, seeing new color formulations, and just seeing it all come to life, and just seeing how you evolve the knowledge that you've been absorbing over the last module and in this module, and just seeing how you put that into practice. So I'm really excited.
Amazing. Thank you guys for that. I know we've already asked you questions. So I've just started to get hellos. I've got a hello from Haluma in Canada, Daniel in Guam, yeah, Ashley from Phoenix, Arizona.
Ida, I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Oh.
I can hear you now.
We don't want any.
No, I can't hear you still, sorry.
We've got Rudy from Florida, and who else we have? We have Ashley here from Boulder, Colorado. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us live today. I just want to remind everyone that we're going to go through quite a bit of content. And what I want you to do is, if you have any questions, pop them in the comment section, because we will do a Q&A like we always do at the end of the webinar. Now, in order to have time to do that, let's get straight into the webinar.
I can't hear you. Sorry.
Oh no, Chris, Eddie, Chris, can you hear me? Guys, can you hear me? In the comments, let me know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
I can hear Eddie.
Chris, maybe try without the earphones.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Sorry about that, everyone. We're trying out a new software to make us look so much more sexy and sleek.
I can hear you now.
Oh, amazing. Good. Oh, thank you guys. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Rudy. That's great. Okay, so let's do a quick deep dive reflection on Module 1. Firstly, I want to congratulate everyone that passed this module. Well done. I know it was hard. We've got feedback there. So, as you know from the last module, feedback is imperative for your development as a Master Color expert. Make sure you consider this. Make sure you consider this even if you scored really high. If you haven't watched the Module 2 webinar, or if you've forgotten the reflection, it's been sent to you by email with a recording link. If you have it, don't have it, can't find it, can't be bothered to look for it, just email support@mastered and we'll send that back over to you. Now, we also have some participants who are currently getting ready for retakes. And I want to say, first of all, it does not matter at all. And we've said this before, retakes, failing something, it's just an opportunity for double the amount of feedback that you would usually get. What I want you guys to know is this is the best time for you to get a higher score, because the feedback that you've been given from your Module 1 core is fresh in your minds, and it's going to give you everything that you need to take you to that next level. Chris, Eddie, I'm going to ask you guys, what is the best tips that we can give the participants retaking after Christmas?
So I guess if you are retaking, like Edith says, these things happen, it's absolutely fine. Just use it as an opportunity to get more feedback. But take into consideration when you're doing your online test exactly where you lost the marks previously. Have a look at when you're reading the questions, make sure that you are giving enough answers, because sometimes when I've assessed people in the past, like they've given me one answer which is correct, but actually I need 4 answers from you. So always check and pay attention to the question.
If you're retaking the model assessment, what I always think about is, what did I do really well? Where did I get marks? What did I get loads of positive feedback on? And make sure I include that, because that's my, my bare essential. That's the meat on my bones. Then to build on that, think about what the areas of opportunities were. Where did I lose marks? What could I have done better? You may have given yourself critique while you were talking about it. So, think about that as well. But make sure that you don't miss anything that you did well the first time, or that you was fed back the first time that you didn't do. So it's kind of a balance of both.
Yeah, great advice. I know sometimes when you're really in the thick of it and you're really doing everything you possibly can to make sure that you tick every single box, sometimes you can't see the wood from the trees. Eddie and I work really closely together, and quite often I'll ask him to check my work, or Eddie will ask me to look at something that he has put together, because you're a bit more distanced from it. So if there is like a husband or a wife or someone in your salon who can read through everything that you're uploading, just to make sure that you are ticking every single box. And if they don't understand it, it might be that your assessor or your accreditor doesn't understand it either. So that sometimes just helps take a bit of a step back and make sure that you're getting everything in.
Thank you, both of you. Those are some really great points. And it does really help when you do have someone else looking at your work or what it is that you're doing. I know I'm like the worst for making typos and grammar mistakes. Because English is not my first language, so I always get like the guys in the office to cross-check it for me, and my spelling is absolutely terrible. Okay, I want to take just 2 beats to have a bit of a moan. Well, it's not a moan, but I want to be really serious about this. We set deadlines because we want to make sure that you guys are in the best position you can to really nail this accreditation. And of course, I'm not speaking for everyone, and this is really interesting press. But what happens when you don't meet the deadline and you haven't got in touch with a valid reason is you forfeit your opportunity to retake. So that means if you were to take your call and retake instead and you fail, you're forfeiting your opportunity to be able to do the assessment again. Now, I will quickly explain why deadlines are set up, just so I can give you guys a bit of background on our side. So we give you a deadline, which is a week before the beginning of accreditation call week. And in those 7 days from when you submit to when call week starts, your assessor is going to log in and mark your submissions ahead of your call. So quite candidly, if you haven't submitted, then we don't have anything to mark, right? What actually happens on the accreditation call is your assessor isn't marking your work in the line. The accreditation call is really your opportunity to bring your mark up. And you do this by explaining the logic and the decision making of everything that you've submitted. And then, as you guys know, because you've done it already in Module 1, during your call or after your call, your assessor will decide your final mark. Like I said, we just want to make sure that you guys are in the best position you can to be accredited. And if you don't stick to deadline, that gives us less time, less leeway to be able to help you when you have difficult situations. I know that also we've explained time management on previous webinars, and I won't go into detail about that because I know that's not what you guys want us to talk about today. But if you do need any extra help, just contact support@master.com. Chris, Eddie, I know I've just babbled on. Is there any other information or tips that you want to add on this?
I suppose for me, the big part of being a master color expert is demonstrating professionalism. You know, it's not just about the work you submit, but it's how you conduct yourself. And when we think about how master color expert is designed, that's what it's designed with in mind as such. You know, it also includes, you know, your work being timeless, but professional, you know, having the right attitude towards your work and having a chance to stand out within like a community or, you know, as a hairdresser. So always think about like how you are seen for the full journey, not just, you know, the hair that you produce.
Took a sip of my tea at the wrong time there. Yeah, I totally agree, Eddie. It's more than just the knowledge that you're getting. It's about how you come across in terms of your positive energy, the way that you approach things, the way that you communicate, the level of organization. It's about being an expert, but more than just in the technical aspects of hairdressing, because we know that, you know, a huge part of being a hairdresser is about being that, you know, people person, but, you know, balancing lots of plates at the same time. And if you have everything else in place, all your ducks in a row, then if a bump in the road does come up, it just means that you are in a much stronger place to be able to quickly and resolve it. So yeah, we'd expect just you to have a high level of everything to be an expert.
Guys, can I break the script for a moment?
Go for it.
I am super excited about the questions that are coming in.
I know we've got lots of different ones, don't we?
I know, I get the science ones. Okay, go. Sorry.
No, thank you guys. They're both really good points. And of course, this doesn't take away at all from the fact that you guys have done amazingly well on Module 1. And you've all been a pleasure to be around so far. What we're saying is we just want to prevent anything happening that wouldn't put you in the best position to graduate. Now that we've said all this and we've spoken about professionalism and deadlines on time and just being grateful of positive energy, what I want to do is I want to introduce one of our special guests. Our special guest is one of our alumni from the Moss Color Expert program. I'm going to bring her up now. Amy is joining us today from California. Hi, Amy. Thank you so much.
Hi. How are you?
I'm going to do a bit of talking about Amy really quickly. So Amy was on the pilot program. She was and is someone who is 100% committed to her development on Moss Color Expert. Amy has always been professional and just a pleasure to support throughout the 5 months. And even now, she's been on a couple of webinars with us, and it's a pleasure every time. Amy graduated with really high scores. I know I'm just giving all this great info. Amy graduated with really high scores, and of course, as you can see, she's now our go-to alumni when we need you guys' perspective, because we're not actively taking Color Expert at the moment, and we know that we don't always feel how you feel. So it's important to have people like Amy here, because she's been in your shoes really recently. Amy, thank you again for joining us. I want to ask you our first question of the evening.
Okay.
How did you make the most of Moss Color Expert, and how would you give tips to participants to do the same?
Well, I think for me, the most important thing was really leaning into my fear. I was terrified the whole time in the beginning. And I decided that it was going to be temporary and that I was just going to open myself to the experience and learn everything and be 100% committed. And I think that really paid off in the end. It's truly such a short period of time when you're looking back on it. There's no reason to not just completely embrace everything that's happening. Yeah,
absolutely. In the grand scheme of things, am I right in saying to all of you that it's a very small part of what you will then go on to do?
Absolutely. it's you realize that you're capable of so much more than you thought, and all of the looks and techniques that you've dreamt about are really within your reach if you're willing to do the research and learn. It's a great feeling.
We've got loads of positive comments coming in. One comment extra saying, I'm all in with a love heart. And then Amy, lots of people saying, hello. Hi, Amy from, yeah. Hi, Amy. Okay, so we can get through as much as possible. I am going to move on how best to approach module 2. So we're going to be looking in more detail at the model assessment, specifically the requirements in the brief and some tips and tricks on all of that. We will also touch on the head block challenge too. And of course, guys, I know you know, but do put some comments and questions into the comment section. If you have any burning questions, we'll answer as many as possible as we can. I am going to hand you guys over to Chris and Eddie to give you some tips on that.
I suppose the first thing to remember is your model needs to have a natural depth between a 2-stroke go and a 7-stroke go. That is the big thing. She has to also have a natural regrowth of 5 centimeters. All of the hair does not need to be natural. Yes, depending on what service you do, it could be a benefit or maybe it's not a benefit, but there has to be a natural regrowth so that you can show that there is a starting point and an end point. Very important.
Yeah, really good. You must lighten the hair at least 3 levels, and the result must be salon acceptable, respecting the integrity and the condition of the hair. So as well, yes, we're saying it's a lightening based project, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every single or the model that you do needs to be a blonde at the end of it. So if you're working from a depth of a 2, think about how you can bring alive maybe a technique that you use on lighter depths and bring it alive for your clients with darker natural hair color.
That's really, really, really important because I don't know if you know this, but I'm the person who answers your questions, like I said earlier. So toning is exceptionally important, and I'm getting a lot of questions about what can you tone with. Remember that 3 levels lighter is 3 levels lighter, and your toner may affect that, and how you lighten may affect that. So if you want to do like a vibrant red or a vivid blue that's quite deep or quite dark, just be conscious that you don't darken the hair again. Also, last year we saw with some models, people did beautiful balayage techniques and they lightened hair that was naturally a 7 to yellow, which is really only 1 level lift. So just be mindful, technical, yet creative. Do you know what I mean? Think about what you're doing and think about what the end point is. So I know somebody already asked, can they lighten to a 10 and tone with the 9? Yes, if you've lightened from a 6, but not if you've lightened from a 7 or an 8, if that makes sense. So make sure that you're...
It's got to be 3 levels.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep, and just like your previous assessment in module 1, we want to see you create a mood board, which really demonstrates exactly the color direction and the color palette, and even the kind of the technical result that you're going to achieve. So we want to see lots of visual references. Now, these visual references don't necessarily all need to be of hair. They could be of art or architecture or whatever you feel best sums up the final color result that you want to achieve.
Big point is you must complete every part of the section that is in the guide. So the guide is literally your model page. I can't remember what it's called now, but it's literally there to guide you with what you have to tell us. So make sure that you're telling us everything that's asked. When you actually go in, it's like a PDF that has specific questions that you need to answer. All of those questions are what you're marked on. So make sure you're giving the answer to everything. Don't assume your accreditor knows something that's in your head. Give all of the info.
Yep. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, and make sure that you really look at the techniques that it's been asked for. So you can choose from a full head of foil, full head bleach, full head balayage, a special blonde, or you can combine a mix of those different services. So it doesn't have to be just one of them. It can be a combination, but you need to do, the full head service as such.
Yeah, and what you'll notice from what Eddie said then is, yes, you've got, balayages and full head highlights and things. Now, these are core salon services that we would expect that you guys are pretty confident and competent in executing. But what we want to see on top of that is how you're growing as a person throughout your Master Color Expert journey. So it's pretty likely that all of you out there are more than capable of completing a full head of highlights, and you've developed your own techniques and section patterns and things like that in order to bring that alive. But how are you bringing it to the next level? How are you bringing it to a Master Color Expert level? And what are you learning? And like say this in your model upload. So for example, for me, when I was in the salon, I was always pretty terrified of doing a full head scalp bleach application, because you hear bad stories in the staff room of, oh, I had this client once and all her hair snapped off, or all these kind of horror stories and urban myths that you hear about hairdressing, where maybe the product has been abused, and as a result, as has the hair. So that always made me feel a little bit scared of approaching a full head bleach. So when I did my Master Color Expert, I made sure that that was my number one thing, that I wanted to be 100% clear on exactly how to do it. So I could be the specialist in my area or in my salon, or the go-to person for that. And then, yes, okay, you're doing a full head bleach, but then how are you bringing it alive in a unique way in terms of section patterns or different layering toning techniques that you're doing. So we want to see all of that from you.
You must incorporate a section pattern that is completely personalized to your model. However, we have given you in module 1 in the craft book some starting points. So we also got a lot of questions about, how you can use these and how you can use these principles or these shapes. So to give you a little example of what we want to see, if you might take the principle of a simple diamond. So I love a diamond shape because I think you can do so much with it. So for example, if you want either a soft balayage or more of an impactual, baby-like balayage effect, start off with a diamond. If you place a diamond on the top of the head, encompassing the crown, but working back from the front hairline, you will have 4 sides. Those 4 sides can be your points of focus. So if you were to heavy highlight each of the sides, you will get a face frame, you will get lightness around the hat line, or the curvature of the head that will appear through the mid-lengths and ends really strong. Then you might decide to balayage the hair that's not in the foils, like underneath or on the top section, so that you can get that impact at the front, you can get that impact in the middle, but you can get softness from underneath and on top. So, just think about, how you might take a basic principle, make it really personalized, really bespoke.
Yeah, great tip. Think about as well, like the type of hair that you're working on. So if you are, let's say, how you would adapt a technique for someone with a curly or coily hair type, what considerations do you need to bring in to show that you are an expert in now working with that type of hair? So, we know that potentially curly hair tends to be a bit more dehydrated. It tends to be a little bit more delicate sometimes. So demonstrate that you are aware of this by maybe using a lower developer or adjusting your development time slightly. And think about maybe if you have someone with quite a strong curl family, like how are you going to bring that in and how are you going to show that you're not working against that and you're working with it? So maybe the kind of result that you would normally get with someone with a straighter hair texture, how would you get a similar result, but how would you adapt your technique? So would it be that maybe you would normally work in back-to-back foils, but because of this hair texture, you need to work with stronger panels of freehand work in order to create that effect? Think about maybe one technique that I really love when I'm working with curly hair is I work with a lot of halo sections, so more like circular sections that work around the head, because curls tend to expand out. So think about how maybe if you're working with horizontal sections that probably just wouldn't look very nice in straighter hair textures, you'd probably tend to work more diagonal or more vertical. But with curly hair, it's a bit more forgiving, and you tend to want to see something a bit stronger in order to layer up those halos of color around the head, or depending on maybe they have a heavier fringe or something like that. think about as well how you can slightly nudge your clients into a more artistic direction. We know that we tend to see a lot of clients now tend to want things where it's a bit more of a natural result, which is totally fine and is really, really popular. But how can you start to nudge people into a more creative way? What colors can you add into your formula that get people a little bit more excited rather? Because we know that it can be that clients sort of fall into a bit of a trap of doing the same thing every single time, and they just come in and they're having the same old service. But how can you keep your column a bit more exciting? And what can you introduce maybe into your mixtures to make it a little bit more punchy and a little bit more dynamic? And then that'll get them more excited and more open to change in the future. And then I've got a last point here. Again, I know I said this earlier, but it's really important that you're always thinking about how everything that I learn on the Master Color Expert journey is going to help me grow as a person and help me grow my business and help me grow my reputation. So think about maybe even what are you missing from your Instagram account that your Instagram account, maybe it's amazing at balayage, but not every single client wants that service. So how can you make sure that if a client is looking at your Instagram account, they see something that's relevant to them? So do a bit of a spot check of what's on your Instagram, and maybe that will help guide you on the kind of technique that you might want to try on this model assessment.
Another big opportunity here is, this is a rare situation where you have a model, you're doing an assessment, it's not a customer, it's not a client. You can try out something new, you can explore something, and your accreditor wants to see you do that. They want to encourage you and grow you and make you better. So it could be something simple like toning with Illumina Color. Maybe you've never toned with Illumina Color before and you want to do a root shadow technique and you want to see the influence of the violet carrier tone and all of that. This is your chance to shine and your chance to do that. Maybe lighten with a product like Magma, maybe try a bleach that you've never used before. Explore and see how that evolves and gets you creative.
Yeah, it's a really good point actually you make about Magma, Eddie, because I remember, was it 5 or 6 years ago when Limoncello was launched by Magma, and we were all like, oh my God, this is amazing. We have a really vibrant new color to play with. And then I would go into salons and teach it and people would be like, well, nobody wants yellow highlights. What am I going to use this for? So thinking about how can I make this still bring this into more of a, what's the word? More natural kind of colorway. Sorry?
I was going to say commercial kind of.
Yeah, not every single client is going to want neon, yellow fringes and things like that, although that is gorgeous. But how can I use a product like that in a way that's still more commercial? So for example, we would use limoncello on darker depths, maybe quite coarse, dark hair on the depth of a 4 or something like that, lifting it up a couple of levels, and it reveals this amazing conker oaky kind of tone, because the limoncello yellow is mixing with the natural undercoats that are in the hair and creating this really beautiful toffee tone. Or maybe creative mixtures and using it with combining it with something like stroke 4/4 in order to create this rich orangey tangerine tone. And we also know that by adding a little bit of warmth into your mixture, you end up with much shinier, glossier results, because warm colors tend to reflect light a lot more and cool colors tend to absorb light a lot more. So thinking about, just adding a little bit of limoncello into your mix sometimes can give you a much glossier result. So
absolutely. Thank you, guys. I know that obviously a lot of information, but we want to give you, as always, as much as possible. And I know we can't really give you that much, so the more tips and tricks we can, the better. Of course, if you need to watch the webinar again, make notes, feel free to do so. This is coming out in same time tomorrow. You'll get an email with the recording. Amy, because you're here too, what extra tips do you have on how to tackle the model assessment? Did you have any good tips on how to source models? How did you organize yourself? How did you make sure that you captured all the information that's required?
Well, I tried to pay really close attention to what my assessor was asking of me in my when we had spoken before, blonding is something I'm really comfortable with. So I tried to stretch myself. For instance, we recommended a new folding pattern for my foils. And I ended up using Magma as opposed to my normal Blonde D'Or with 20 volume. So I tried to incorporate all of those new techniques and really stretch myself. So, and I think it's also really important to put a lot of detail in your brief. That I think made a big difference. I think for every statement that you make, why, how, and how long is really important.
Yeah, explaining all the logic in the decision making. Is there anything that you forgot to add a couple of times that would be something that would trick participants at this time?
I'm sorry, say again, please.
Sorry, it wasn't anything that you maybe didn't add a couple first times that you would recommend participants to add and not forget when they're doing their work in terms of write-up?
In terms of your write-up. I think timing is really important. I feel like with each write-up, I became more and more detailed. By the end of it, I felt like I was writing a novel. And that's the point where she said, yes. So I just kept writing through like a journal entry. And by the end of it, it was, the more detailed, the better, for sure. I do feel that module 2 is the module that had the most direct effect on my day-to-day salon life. Like I still use all of those techniques now in the salon behind the chair. So I think it's a really valuable module.
Good. We're glad to hear that. And it's interesting to hear that the tip is write like you're writing a novel. So you're writing a novel. It's a really beautiful way to do it.
Right. I would sit down after I completed the model, which I was exhausted, but everything's very fresh in your brain. And I would just go through everything I did right then and there. And then I would go back a day later and actually write everything out. But to get it on paper fresh, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. When it's still fresh in your mind, just like the feedback that you receive to action on the next module.
Right.
What will we? Okay, so it's past the hour. We're going to move on to the headbook challenge because I'm worried we won't have enough time for questions. Chris, Eddie, take it away with your tips and tricks for the headlock challenge.
So apologies. So I suppose the big thing to me with the headlock challenge is to remember that it's around a long time. You're not the first person to do this. You won't be the last, and it is super, super, super stressful. It's part of MCE. It's going nowhere. I suppose the big bit of advice for me is stay consistent to what what you do and apply what you know as a hairdresser. We get a lot of questions about the head block, and it's a super sensitive topic for absolutely everyone in face-to-face and in studio, but it's going nowhere.
No, it is quite funny because, we know it's difficult, and like we've been there, and like Eddie cried when he did his. And so we know it's difficult, and we appreciate that, but it is going to be something that's super important. We want to see, that you are approaching it in like a really professional way, like we said before, like the way you are applying your color, your logical steps in order to achieve the result that you want to get, the formula choices, the technique, the way you approach it, and the brief explains all of this, but it doesn't really explain how to get there, but it tells you that that's what you're being assessed on, but how you figure it out is ultimately down to you. But I know there's lots of questions about strand tests and could be strand tests and all that kind of thing. Absolutely, completely. And if anything, it's a bit like any time you would approach a client in the salon, like it gives you a really good gauge on exactly what you're going to get. And it gives you a good foundation when it comes to having a conversation with your mentor about why you made the choices that you made. You can demonstrate super easily, this is what I did, this is the result that I got, and so because of that I took these exact steps to get there.
Absolutely. And I suppose the big thing for me is think about your head block logically, and think about what you're marked on is your technical approach, your logic, your result, and your time. And different people will lose marks for different things. So don't try compare yourself to somebody else, because you don't know where somebody else has lost marks. You don't know where somebody else has gained marks. You don't know why they got marks for this. So some people score very high in results. Some people score very high in logic. You know, some people wing it and get a beautiful result, but the logic just isn't there. So make sure that you take a step-by-step approach to your head and reassess at every stage. Once you've done something, it may change. It might not be the same as your original plan. That is okay. But the big thing is, for me, strand test and learn from your strand test. To say it out loud, I suppose the big question people ask is it natural hair or is it treated hair? And my answer is, I don't know, I'm not there. If you strand tested and you get a certain result, or something works or something doesn't work, use your strand test and put that into action. Because you can't argue with a strand test. You can't argue with results.
Absolutely. I think something we keep saying over and over again is just to explain every step of the way and why you do it. And especially in the head block challenge, it is so much about logic and your decision making. Guys, do you have any more tips?
On the head block, I've loads of tips. I suppose, right?
Can't tell you any of them.
No, I will. I suppose my biggest tip on the head block is underlying pigment is so important. Think about what you're lightening to and what you're recoloring with. So you're lightening to a 6-stroke 0, not just the depth of a 6, but you're factoring a cool or a natural tone. So make sure your underlying pigment isn't going to overpower that. My second tip is recoloring and toning are two very different things. So you bleach it or you lighten it, there is no point in going over it with a glossing service or something for 5 minutes. You need your developer, you need your 6% or your 4% if you're using a permanent color. 1.9% is only for demi-permanent. You're coloring, you're not toning. And that scares a lot of people, but it's a big difference when it comes to color longevity. And people can be afraid of 6% or 4% sometimes. And I'm always like, why? That's what makes the color do what it needs to do. Give it what it needs. So
thank you for that. I'm going to try and take as many tips as I can. Amy, I'll ask you as well. You did this not too long ago. What was your experience of the head block challenge like? And what tips do you have on how best to approach it without giving anything away?
Okay. Well, I found it really humbling when I first pulled the head block out of the box. I looked at it and I went, oh, okay. And then I left it till the end of the module. And that was a really big mistake. So for module 2, I read the module and then immediately started working on it. So I think my biggest tip is don't wait. I think that the information is in the module. If you read it, you can pick up a lot of tips. I think the section on the global differences in hair and underlying pigments are really important. And then finally, I think thinking of it less as a trauma and more as a puzzle is really helpful. You're becoming friends with her. Sybil.
What would you say your biggest win head block specifically was? What did you do with her at the end?
I kept her, actually. By the end of it, I loved her. I mean, I was mad at her, don't get me wrong. I needed to put her in the closet for a little while. So she's there, but occasionally I will bring her out. And often my clients will ask to see pictures of the final result because she lived next to me at the station next door through this entire process. So everybody was really invested in her.
I think that brings me perfectly on to my next point, which is how to chat about your experience. Amy, you were definitely someone that it was a whole community experience for you, your family and your clients, and going through Multicolor Expert. What we're saying to participants this time around is now is the time that you should be chatting about what you're learning, and the end goal. If you do that now, you're starting to promote yourself and you're building excitement for your existing clients and the future ones to come. Essentially, what you're doing is you're making them invested in you and your journey. What I will ask, guys, if any of you have had any light bulb moments so far, comment in the comment section and we'll read some of those out. Amy, I want to ask you, I know we touched on it with the head drop challenge, but what were your wins overall? What were the light bulb moments that you had on Mascara Expert, and how did you share those with the community around you?
So I think for me, a light bulb moment was just realizing how much support I actually did have and how invested my clients were in the process. I think that they understood inherently that it would serve them in the end. And I couldn't believe how much everyone wanted to help. I had clients post things on their social media trying to help me find models, which actually was really helpful because I got some new clients that way. Basically that was my main light bulb moment, is realizing that, we were all in this together.
And I bet that helped you so much stay motivated. How did you make sure that you didn't get overwhelmed because you had so much going on?
I think I just kept repeating to myself, it's temporary. And I decided to be a badass about it and not be a baby. And it was hard, and I would wake up before work and I would study, and occasionally I would need to take a day off, but people respond to the sentence, I have class, more than I have to study. So when I needed time, I would just simply say, I have class. And that was how I would carve the time. It's just not even leaving it open for discussion, basically.
Good point. So what you're saying is you made boundaries with the people around you, and it wasn't something that you were going to find time to do. You made sure that it was in your schedule and you stuck to that.
Absolutely. Every Monday was the day that I chose to work on MCE. And then another important thing I think that I did was, after completing module 1, I realized that I would need a day or two to kind of wrap things up and to take care of any fires that would come up. So I went through my book and I marked off a couple days, and I didn't tell a soul. And I used those days just in case something would come up. And actually, I ended up needing them.
Yeah.
In the end, to write the briefs mostly.
Yeah, you always do. Amy, you're really lucky because obviously you have a super supportive family and a super supportive community and salon. What tips do you have to participants that might be taking this journey on their own?
Well, I think realize that the MCE community is a support system as well. I think unless you're doing it, I don't think you can truly understand. You might have people that want to be supportive, but if you're not actually doing the work, you don't get it. So just be tough, because it is temporary and it's so worth it in the end. It truly is.
Absolutely. Yeah. You need to put everything in to get everything out. Chris, Eddie, of course, you guys have both done Mascara Expert more than once. What tips do you have for people that will be doing this on their own?
That are going through module 2.
Yeah. I think overall too.
You might feel like you're on your own, but you're not. Like, we're all here for you through the mastered, the support, and also when you get in touch with Eddie, he's there, he's waiting. Christmas Day, he'll be available, I'm sure. And just desperate for your emails to come in. No, but you're not on your own. I know it's difficult, but again, so you have your phrase, you can reach out to each other. And then also the Wella Professionals hair Facebook page as well. It's really good.
Definitely. Eddie, have you got anything?
I suppose for me, I'm probably a little bit different because I'm a bit of a loner. Sometimes when it comes to studying, I'm like, sometimes it's okay because other people you might find it overwhelming to look at other people's answers, and that's okay as well. That if you are a solitary worker, just be a solitary worker. Look at other people's work. If you feel like you need the communication, go with the communication, but don't take other people's communication as gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Would be my advice.
Yeah, that's such a good point actually, because I know the Facebook group is a peer-to-peer Facebook group, and it's meant for you guys to help each other and solve dilemmas together. But asking a technical question, just want to remind everyone that ask that to the technical support team, which is Eddie and I. I mostly just send the questions over to Eddie because I'm not the right person to advise you on what you should be doing tech-wise. But Eddie is best placed to do this, and we will give you solid answers that all your assessors have been briefed on, and those will be the questions that help you, or the answers to the questions that help you get to the pass mark. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Eddie, for that. Sorry, I know I keep going between screens. What I've noticed is when all four of us are on, there's a really weird typing sound, but we're just going to soldier through with the system. Amy, I've got another question for you. I want to know, and I know you kind of touched on this already, about how your clients started to help you find models, etc., etc. Talk to me in a bit more detail about how you marketed yourself, firstly as a participant going through Master Color Expert, and then when you graduated, and what changed?
Well, first of all, I just made sure that absolutely everybody that sat in my chair at some point, I would talk to them about what I was doing. I think it naturally comes up in conversation. How are you? How are you? And I also use my social media. So for instance, in my Instagram stories, I almost made it like a little joke, like how many different places around the world can Amy study? Amy person here at the racetrack. And, it went on and on. Changing the little header on your Instagram, I think, is important. And just basically presenting yourself with a different air. I made sure, it's you want to show up, dress nicely, have your tray set up the Wella way. Let your clients see a tangible difference in you while you're going on the program.
That's such a good point.
Yeah, a lot of my clients, in their interest in helping me find models, it advertised for me as well. That would,
yeah, because what you're essentially doing is you're building a network of people that are going to continue to advertise you to one person, and then that will grow kind of like a tree, and it trickles down so you have visibility across a multitude of different potential clients too. Amy, what was, and I know we're still quite far from graduation, but tell me, just because this makes me really excited, what's changed for you since you did Master Color Expert?
I feel like a completely new hairstylist, and I've been doing hair a really long time. So it just gives you this confidence of knowing how to source the information that you're looking for. And it gives your clients and colleagues confidence in you. I enjoy talking to my colleagues about color and the science behind color. And, to be honest with you, I did have a pretty significant price increase, and not one person questioned it, which, I mean, that's the bottom line, right? In some ways, beyond the artistry, of course. My clients are also more willing to take a risk with their hair. When I suggest it, they often just say, well, you're the expert. It's wonderful.
Absolutely, it's confidence for you, and in turn it gives the people that sit in your chair the confidence in you too.
Absolutely.
Confidence to deliver. Chris, Eddie, I want to ask you guys as well. Do you have any tips on how to market yourself as a Master Color Expert, both as a participant now and when you're accredited?
Can I just say what Amy said there was beautiful, especially when she said about,
so I think
firstly, taking your clients.
Well, it's my job now. I've made Master Color Expert my career, which is a bit strange, I guess. But it definitely helped me to build my profile within the company I now work. But I think it's super important to share with as many people as, you know, who will listen to you, that you're a master color expert, because you are in the elite of the hairdressing industry once you're in the alumni. And I think it's important that clients, actually, do you know what, clients, I think they're getting much more aware of it now. I think if you'd said like 5-6 years ago, or, you know, before the rise of the way the social media is now, people didn't really know what it took to achieve the things that we have to achieve as hairdressers to get stuff, like, you know, we're like magicians sometimes. So I think demonstrating that you're a master color expert, people are actually really interested and open to it, and they want that, and they're actively, we know that they're actively looking for MCEs in their area. And so you tell everyone that you are that person, it's instantly going to help you grow your business. And it's going to mean that your clients leave with hair that's, the hair color is going to last longer. The hair is going to, you know, stay without breaking off, because yes, you might have lifted it, but you might not have lifted it in the right way. You know, you've got all the knowledge to get them to not only where they want to be, but to keep them there. And then if they want to change, then you can do that as well.
That was really nice, Chris. Thank you for that. Eddie, what about you?
I was just going to say what Amy said at the beginning was absolutely beautiful. And take the clients on the journey with you. Sometimes our ego can get in the way, and we're like, oh, I don't want them to know I'm doing my clients know I'm doing a course. They'll think that I'm not good enough. But, you know, you're taking yourself through a master's. You know, people buy into people buy into the personal side of people, and they will just come on that journey with you and support you. And when you come out the other side, they will have a different level of trust. And I think Amy is just evidence of that. You know, show people what you're doing, shout about it, and shout about it afterwards, because I don't think anyone could have said it as beautifully as Amy, especially with the little price increase dropped in there.
Absolutely, thank you. Like we said at the beginning of the webinar, it's so important to have a participant perspective on this, well, an alumni. Amy, before we move on to the Q&A section, do you have any more tips in terms of marketing yourself, being your most confident person, really just making the most out of Master Color Expert?
I just say, don't waste an opportunity to participate. Don't let your fear hold you back. Just go forward. I'm quite shy, and anytime something came up where we were asked to be on camera or public in some way, even if it was just posting in Instagram stories, my instinct was to recoil a little bit, and I decided to push forward, and it's worth it.
Absolutely.
Just grab it by the horns. It's very short period of time.
Absolutely. You, I had to, you're part of the marketing video too. So as we go through Master Color Expert, you'll have all these small opportunities, whether it's information on social media, whether it's posting that you've passed and you're moving on to the next module, whether you want to share with your followers or your community what you're doing on an assessment, etc., etc. There's all these little moments that you have the opportunity to present yourself in the most professional, amazing, expert light that you're becoming. Thank you so much for that, Amy. We're going to move on to the Q&A section. Amy's still here with us. I think we might go over a little bit because we only have 7 minutes on the clock, but we've got quite a bit of questions. If you have questions for Amy, pop them in the comment section too. She's going to stay with us while we go through the next ones. Let me welcome Chris and Eddie back, so we're all full on screen. Hi guys. Let's get to the questions. So I've got these divided. Let's start with the I've got a question from Catherine Herbert. Up to you which one of you guys pick with. Can I lift a base 7 to a level 10 and tone a base 9? Is this a pass?
So this is the one we touched on earlier. So if your end result is toned with a 9, it's not 3 levels lighter. So my recommendation would be no.
Fab. Another one, Jamie Perez. Are we allowed to use the same mood boards we've used previously if they have the same tone and direction our clients are looking for?
I think I'd be surprised if they're having exactly the same. If if your rotation and your direction is exactly the same, then I would ask you to stretch yourself maybe a little bit further. Think about, okay, if that's a great direction that you want to go in, maybe consider how you could evolve it. So ideally, no, don't give us the same board because it's a new project. We want to see you do new things. So I would try and stretch yourself out a little bit further. We understand that these things can take a little bit of time, but mood boards don't need to be, you know, crazy and spend hours and hours and days putting it together. Just give us an idea of the direction you want to work in.
Absolutely. And as Amy said, and as Chris and Eddie said before, module 2 is where you start moving into the slightly more creative, and what you want to do is give yourself an opportunity to do something else. So even if you want to go with the same types of tones that you used before, why not make a completely different mood board with the feedback that you got from your module 1 assessment 2? Let's have another one. Rudy Rodriguez. When you say full head of highlights, do you mean every strand of hair?
So it's probably a terminology difference based on where you are in the world. So full head of highlights or full head foil just means that you cover every single area of the head, not that you take every strand of hair. So you don't just maybe do like a T-section in the front or the top half of the head. It means that you cover every area, not every single hair. You can, but you don't have to, no.
Fab, amazing. Thank you for that, Eddie. A couple more on the model assessment. One from Haluma. I'm planning to do a full head bleach because I'm not confident with it. So is a level 2 to level 9 considered too much?
Oof. I mean, to be honest, you have to really be realistic about your expectations, and I think taking someone from a 2 to a 9 is quite a stretch. And think about the time that you've got to actually achieve this result. And like we said earlier, you want to make sure that you're always looking after the integrity of the hair. It might be that you just work with the 3 levels to start with, and then, you know, if that client does want to be on the level of a 9, you're going to have to support that over a longer period of time. I would say, yeah, 2 to a 9 is probably quite a stretch.
If I were to give you a little tip, I would say look at the regrowth if it's already blonde on the ends. If it's more than 2 centimeters, you know what I mean? What are you going to have to do in that scenario? That's all I'm saying, because you could make yourself life hell, but I would love to see you do it.
Yeah.
Next question, one from Nicole. Can we use techniques that Wella doesn't educate on, like air touch?
Well, I do educate on air touch. We have some fabulous videos that Chris produced last year. Also, there's some beautiful videos coming from Wella up in like the Nordics and in Russia. The world is a small place now that you can access. If anyone wants to see them, I can tell you, go to Wella Nordic on Instagram and you'll see some beautiful air touch videos.
Amazing. And if you guys need any links to that, we can send that to you at support@masters.com. Just send an email in and we'll get that to you. Okay, let's do some headlock challenge questions. Another from Nicole. Let me have a look. So for the last module, and I'm going to say supposedly because I don't have any evidence of this 100%. But we will look into it. Supposedly, some people were marked off for covering the mannequin's hair's grey hair. Okay, so what Nicole is saying is some participants may have been deducted marks for covering the mannequin's grey hairs. Wasn't the point to get the hair to a 6/0? Now, of course, I don't have any evidence of this, but Chris, would that be the case? What would be the logic?
I would need to see this one case by.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say I don't really understand the question. Sorry. So maybe what we should do, Nicole, we'll speak to you directly, because I'm sorry, I don't get it.
From my end, what I would say here, Nicole, is each headlock is slightly different. There are variants. In some situations, people assess the natural hair as maybe 50 to 70% natural, with maybe 30% white and chose to use 6%, even though they assess the natural as like a 4/0. So your higher priority is lighten the natural, not cover the white hair. So maybe it's not that, it could have been a misunderstanding that they weren't telling you, oh, you shouldn't have covered the white hair. It's that you should have prioritized lightening over darkening, because I know that question has come up a couple of times in the past. Might not be suitable to your specific scenario, but if you pop a little email, we can look individually at yours.
Absolutely.
So it depends on the scenario that you're in on your head and the steps that you've taken, whether you've lightened or not. You know, it's quite individual. That's where I would assume that was coming from. Your developer's trying to prioritize coverage, not lightening, or lightening, not coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is actually a great opportunity to read back through your feedback, so you are 100% sure and you understand what you were deducted marks on, because of course we need to check this in more detail, but if you're going into the next model assessment or the next head block challenge with the idea that you lost marks for that specific reason when your assessor is actually trying to tell you something else, as Eddie explained, and we don't want you to lose marks in the same process. We want you to build from the feedback. But it's a great point to bring up. Thank you, Nicole. And just as a reminder, guys, if you do have any issues with any of your marks, and by that I mean you're confused about why you've been deducted something, or you spoke to one of your peers and they weren't deducted for X, Y, and Z, just let us know. As Eddie said, he goes through all the marking guides, so we can get a double eye on that if need be. Sorry, Chris, I popped you off the screen because I can only do 2 at a time for this typing issue, but I'm going to bring you back on. I'm just going to ask you this question quickly. So Christina asked, you mentioned pre-lighting the head block and then recoloring to a strict stroke 0 instead of toning with low volume. Is it good practice to use a 20 vol on pre-lightened hair? I would usually avoid doing this.
You can totally do it from what I would say is absolutely. So your developer at 6% is like a sweet spot to bring the right amount of primaries and couplers together, your oxidative molecules. If you use a lower developer, we always talk about developers as level of lift, but they're also what tells your ingredients to come together. So if you use a permanent color with a low developer, you don't get enough dye formation. The dye stuffs don't come together. So it's absolutely totally fine. And color is not what it used to be 50 years ago when they would have said, no, don't do it.
Thank you for that, Eddie. Sorry, I'm really rushing you guys. I know it's 2 minutes past the hour. I just want to get as many of these questions answered as possible. So let me do another one. I've got another question from Christina. Let me see. Do permanent color ranges contain anionic or cationic dyes or a mixture? Sorry if I've pronounced that completely incorrectly.
Do you want me to take this, Chris, or you?
Yeah, no, it's fine. Go for it.
I can. So most permanent colors contain oxidative dyes, which is your primaries and your couplers. When it comes to direct dyes, some formulas have very low quantities of direct dyes that could be cationic, anionic, or non-ionic, depending on what they're designed to do or what the shade is. So yes, but it's very rare. But always remember that if the shade contains direct dyes, it will come out of the tube the exact color of the dye, because direct dyes don't change color. So 0/43, for example, comes out orange.
Thank you, guys. Another one from Michelle. With everything that I am learning about developers and what their job is, I'm curious to know, what is the chemical difference between pastel 1.9% and a color touch emulsion 1.9%?
The $1 million question. So this is what I get asked, I would say 5 times a day. So the first thing is, developer is a product, hydrogen peroxide is an ingredient. So yes, when you look at the hydrogen peroxide 1.9%, both products have the exact same ingredient of hydrogen peroxide 1.9%. However, the rest of the ingredients is what makes that product unique. And the biggest, this could be something down to conditioning agents, But the biggest difference is the rheology or the consistency of that product. So if you think about this, if you have a glass of water and a glass of whipped cream, and they both have dye in them, and you spill the water and you spill the cream, they react differently with what they hit. So rheology is how a product is mixed and how it will flow. So if you have something like Color Touch, it has the right amount of dyes in it to flow through the hair in a certain way and in a certain scenario. So if you change the rheology or the other ingredients in that product, you can actually change the result drastically, purely based on how it goes onto the hair during application. The second thing is they have pH adjusters to make sure that your color and your developer, when mixed, sit at the right alkalinity or acidity for that dye to perform. Because if you change the acidity, the dye can actually give you a slightly different color. So we used to do this experiment years ago where we would take boiled cabbage water, which is red, and we would put a spoonful of alkaline soap in it, and it would turn green. So as soon as that turned alkaline, it completely changed color from purple to green. Then we would put lemon juice in it, which would turn acidic, and it would turn pink. So it just shows you when you change or when you have the wrong pH level, the effects can be absolutely visually drastic. So it's not just about the number 1.9% hydrogen peroxide. That's only one ingredient of a multitude of ingredients.
Fab, thank you for that, Eddie. I'm going to try and get as many science questions done. I've got one from Kim. Referring to, and sorry, my pronunciation is terrible, but when referring to oxidative dyes, what exactly does oxidative mean in reference to this?
It needs oxygen. So hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. So it's water with more oxygen in it. So the dyes are two different molecules that are separate. They interact with oxygen and they come together and form a color. So oxidative means it reacts with oxygen.
Amazing, thank you guys. One from Nicole. With the Renew product, it says to use heat, and the recommendation is Climazone. So if we don't have a Climazone, should we use a different heat source or not any at all?
With this one, I would say all of our tech products are tested with the Climazone, so I would stick to using that. But if you don't have one, you can create other heat sources, maybe like a hot towel, something like that. Or even if you live in like a warm part of the country, just sit near a window where the sunlight's coming in. But I personally wouldn't be too confident saying, yeah, go ahead and use another heat source, because that's not what I know we don't know what the product result would be.
What's interesting about Climazones is it's called a Climazone because it uses infrared light to create a warm climate around the head. It's not direct heat. So a lot of heaters out there, blow heat or put out direct heat onto the head, which is never what we would recommend with a product, which is why we test everything with a Climazone, because it's a warm climate, not direct heat.
Thank you for that, guys. Obviously, I'm aware that we're going over, but I do, like I said, want to answer as many questions as possible. I'll take two more tech questions, and then I have 4 more extra questions to go through, and then we'll be done. I've got a question from Rudy. What is the strongest blue tone on Wella?
Strongest blue tone? What do you mean by that? Is in terms of like whether you get a stronger result with something like stroke 88 with Colliston Perfect, or yeah, I don't really understand the question. I'm sorry, Eddie.
I suppose if you're looking purely at results, what the strongest blue tone for me would probably be the direct dyes in Color Fresh Create. So New Blue, it's exceptionally potent and it's exceptionally forgiving that you can put it on lots of different levels and it will give you lots of beautiful results and very, very intense results. As a blue, it's very forgiving. It doesn't tend to move green very easily. I hope that answered your question. If it doesn't, drop the question again into support at Mastered if it's a little bit more specific, something that you're looking for.
Thank you, guys. I'm going to try and whiz through the last few. Let me have a look. Okay, I've got a question from Annette. How do you feel about personal content on hair Instagram accounts? I can take this one, Chris and Eddie, if you want to add. What I will say is, in the classroom, there is a video with Sophia Hilton, and she talks about Instagram and how to use it, etc., etc. What she says is that you need to show some personality, right? So add in your lifestyle stuff if you need to, but keep it minimal in comparison to the hair content that you do. She tells you to do this because if you are always posting about lifestyle or personal life, what you risk doing is alienating your client base who potentially don't share the same interests or the same lifestyle as you. So of course, ultimately, it's completely up to you and what you want to get out of Instagram. Do you want it to be a business tool, or do you just want it for fun? And then based on that, you know what you're going to post. Eddie, Chris, do you want to?
Sorry, I didn't hear that question.
It's about personal content on Instagram. I suppose if I were to chime in, I would say it's nice to give people a little glimpse into your personal life because people buy into people. But again, it's about balance, and it's about what you're comfortable showing people as well. You know, I don't put any of like my brother or sister's kids on Instagram, but I'll give them a little glimpse into maybe my travels or something like that. But you know, it's about balance and what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I have two Instagram accounts. So one for like me and my family, and then one for work. And actually, you know, I don't post a lot of hair on my Instagram account because I don't tend to be the one in front of the camera doing it. I tend to be the one behind camera now. So my Instagram is mainly focused around the industry that I'm in, as opposed to the hair work that I actually do.
Thank you for that.
But yes,
Thank you for that. Sorry, I'm batting in. We've got a small audio lag. Amy, how do you use your Instagram, and what would you recommend?
I try to keep my Instagram focused on my clients, actually. So it's mostly about my clients and the hair that I'm doing. And then I actually had heard some feedback from my clients that I wasn't showing enough of myself. So I try to incorporate bits of my life in the Instagram stories, which is fun. But I also, like, on Sundays, I post selfies that my clients take and send to me. So I try to keep it a celebration of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually what you're saying is you have like your certain rituals that you do, and that's how you're going to get your repeat visuals and followers, if that's something that you're building on, is making these small rituals that people can tune into.
Right. I mostly think it's important to keep my Instagram looking very beautiful, though. Like, I won't do anything unless it's beautiful on the
page. Triptychs in your aesthetic. Thank you, Amy. Because I have you, I've got a question that I'd like you to give us more information on, because I'm sure all the participants really want to know too. Daniel has asked, can you give us an example of your price increase? For example, before touch-up or balayage, and now that you're an accredited master color expert.
I raised every price about $15 to $20. And I tend to do things separately. So a touch-up went up $15. My haircut went up $10. My highlights went up $20. So all in all, it's about $40 per service if they're getting like a combined service. I tried to keep my touch-ups a little bit lower, so those people who are needing to come in every 5 weeks don't get turned off. I feel like when you're getting the accent work, that's more of a choice, and people tend to do that for 4 times a year. So I try to be considerate.
How did you feel when it came the time to increase your prices? Because that's what we recommend as a graduate.
It was terrifying. After I finished the program, my clients would actually say, okay, when are you raising your prices? And it took me a few months to really figure out exactly what I wanted those prices to be.
Mhm.
And then I put a little sign out that informed my clients that there would be an increase a month before. And then by the time I had done it, everyone was like, oh, well, that's not so bad. I think they were expecting it to be much more. The area where I live things are extraordinarily expensive. So I think they were pleased that it wasn't more.
Mm-hmm.
So it was far less scary than I was expecting. It was nice to have something to back it up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Amy. Of course, speaking about finances and prices, it's something that's very personal to us, and it always feels scary. It always feels like, I don't know, it's like a question of self-worth and confidence and all these things. But thank you for being so open. I'm sure it will really help everyone when they come to do that in the next couple of months. I'm going to do a quick outro, and then I want some final thoughts from all of you guys. Chris, Eddie, Amy, and guys, of course, if you have any other bits that you want to add and you want us to say before we finish this webinar, which has gone very much over, but what can we do? We're all having a good time. I'm going to give you a quick outro. So let me see. Who am I bringing up on screen? I feel like I'm doing a chat roulette this evening. Let's go with Chris. So, like I said, we need a quick outro. This is really just like the logistics, nitty-gritty stuff that you all don't want to hear, but I have to tell you anyway because it's part of delivering Mask Color. So we close for business at 6 p.m. on Friday, the 20th of December. That's this Friday. When we were, Chris, Eddie, I, and the rest of the master team, and the rest of the Wella team, and all the people that go into building this program, sat down to look at the dates for this round of Master Color Expert Online, we saw that there would obviously be Christmas coming up, and we decided that the best thing that we could do is to give you guys a break. It's something that Amy didn't get when she did her Master Color Expert Online. So sorry, Amy. Now you can see that everyone gets breaks, but it was important because you're basically halfway through your journey for Master Color Expert, and it's been a really intense 2 months. So we feel it's important that you guys need a break to breathe. You need to be with your family. We also get a bit of time off. Come back in the new year, start with retakes, etc., etc. But I want to remind you of a couple of things. So before everything closes on Friday and we all go off and have some Prosecco and start eating a lot of food that we'll complain about when we get back, I want you to do 3 things. So the first thing I want you to do is make sure that your immediate deadlines for 2020 are in your diary for next year. So whether that be you retaking after Christmas, if you're retaking, you want your retake deadline in your calendar, and you also want your retake call slot in your calendar. If you are directly going on to module 2, again, you want your deadline in your calendar and the day of your accreditation call in your calendar. If you have any questions, if you have any issues, anything to do with deadlines, slot, etc., email us and we'll get back to you before Friday. Another thing we want you to do, so you guys are doing this already, but we want you to make your way through the content. Master Color Expert, I know you guys have been in there, we're seeing comments, you guys are buzzing, it's really great to see. But if you haven't been through the content, do please get all your questions in, all your technical questions in to Eddie. I would say, Eddie, am I right in saying if we get all the questions in by Thursday, we can answer them before we close on Friday?
Absolutely.
Amazing. That's what we want to do. We want to get everything answered so then we can all just and take a break. My final one. So sourcing a model for your Module 2 model assessment. If you haven't done this, please do this. Remember, there are a lot of people that want their hair coloured around the holidays. Maybe you can't fit them in right now. You could gently persuade them to do it in the new year, but it is a great time to find a willing model. Use the tips that Amy gave you about word of mouth and speaking to your clients, and they'll speak to their friends and their friends, etc., etc. I know I'm talking really super fast, but it's only because I want to get some final thoughts in before we finish. I am going to ask Amy first. I know we've asked you tons of questions, but is there anything else you want to add? Any piece of motivation? Anything that you can give the participants before we close?
you've got this. If you make it through module 1, you can make it through module 2 and 3, and just be a badass and wake up early and go to bed late and just do it. And study for the test, you guys.
Absolutely. We can't forget about the test.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much. I know I've been gloating about Amy all evening or day, wherever it is that you're based, but it is a testament to what you can achieve as from Master Color Expert, and the changes that it can make to your both professional and personal life. Eddie, thank you, Amy. You're a star. Thank you so much. Chris, Eddie, what about from you guys?
I think, yeah, just use this time, like use your time to spend time with your family. Some people like to completely have a break from everything and just let everything like marinate in their brains and soak in. Some people don't want to lose any momentum and they like to just carry on plowing through it all. Just use the time in the time in the way that's right for you. Don't feel pressured to do anything, or if you see somebody and they're saying, oh yeah, I'm working every single day, like don't let that like worry you or freak you out. You're working your own pace and you will be able to get there. And we'll see you in the next webinar. Merry Christmas.
From me, all I can say is get your questions in, guys. You can see I'm a nerd. You can see I love this. Keep asking me questions. And if I answer a question and there's a question in it, ask me another question or answer my question. Make this conversational. Why everything isn't as simple as you think it is. Something might be exceptionally complex and hard to understand and get your head around. That is okay. Ask questions. Use the resource that is there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. As Amy said, as Eddie said, as Chris said, make the most of absolutely every resource, whatever that might be. I have a quick tip too. We see you asking questions in the classroom. We do answer those. Check your notifications. We go through them and we answer them where we can. And if not, we send you a personal email if it's something specific and that we can't tell everyone the answer to. But apart from that, guys, have an amazing Christmas and New Year. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be back too. Happy holidays, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.